What if the real problem for many men is not performance itself, but the biological pathway through which that performance can exist at all? Most men look for quick solutions, for something that works immediately, without patience, without changing their lifestyle, without developing a deeper understanding of their own body. Yet, this is exactly where the fundamental misunderstanding begins. The human organism does not function like a switch that can simply be flipped. Performance is not an isolated event, but the result of numerous processes that begin long before the decisive moment. One of these processes is particularly underestimated: circulation. Without a stable, elastic, and properly functioning vascular structure, no organ can fully perform its task. This applies not only to the heart or the brain, but to all systems that depend on a continuous supply of oxygen and nutrients. Nevertheless, many men focus almost exclusively on hormones, short-term stimulants, or heavily advertised products that promise fast effects. The actual foundation on which all these processes are built is often ignored. In this context, ginger and honey are frequently dismissed as simple home remedies. Precisely because they seem ordinary, many people consider them too trivial to take seriously. Yet, this is exactly where their decisive advantage lies. Their effect is not based on artificial stimulation, but on supporting natural physiological processes. Ginger does not act like a classic stimulant. It does not force the body into an unnatural reaction. Instead, it supports the natural vascular response, promotes heat generation in the body, and can positively influence the elasticity of blood vessels. Of particular importance is so-called microcirculation, the blood flow through the smallest vessels, which is crucial for tissue supply. Honey is far more than a sweet food. In its natural form, it contains enzymes, polyphenol, and bioactive substances that can have a regulatory effect on inflammatory processes. Chronically low-grade inflammation plays a much greater role in circulatory problems than many people realize. It impairs vascular function, the elasticity of vessel walls, and the responsiveness of the entire system. Honey can also support the absorption of certain nutrients and thus indirectly enhance the effects of other substances. In combination with ginger, the result is not a short-term effect, but a slow, systemic support of the body. This combination is not a replacement for movement, sleep, or a balanced lifestyle. This is precisely where one of the biggest mistakes occurs. Many people view individual measures in isolation and expect immediate results. When this effect does not appear, the approach is dismissed as ineffective. Yet biological adaptations require time. Vascular structures do not change within days, but over weeks and months. Patience is therefore not an optional factor, but a central component of any sustainable change. I am Dr. Angelina Stone. As a physician specializing in metabolism, circulation, and age-related performance decline, I have encountered this pattern for many years. Men come with the desire for a quick solution, even though the underlying problem has often developed over long periods of time. It is not a lack of motivation or willpower. It is a lack of a stable physiological foundation on which performance can be built at all. Many symptoms are not the actual problem, but the result of a system that has fallen out of balance. Performance, therefore, is not a single moment and not an isolated goal. It is the result of a functioning interaction between circulation, metabolism, regeneration, and lifestyle habits. Those who understand this interaction make different decisions and set different priorities. Ginger and honey are not miracle remedies, but they can be part of such a system when properly understood. Stay with me, because in the next section I will explain why ginger and honey show no effect in many cases, even though a scientific foundation exists. This exact misunderstanding determines whether an approach is used meaningfully or fades without effect. If you are looking for medical content without myths, exaggeration, or false promises, subscribe to this channel. Knowledge is the first step towards sustainable change. Why do so many men report that ginger and honey had no noticeable effect for them? I hear this question very often. And in almost every case, the answer is not found in the combination itself, but in the way it is understood and applied. One fundamental problem is expectation. Many people expect an immediate reaction from the body. They compare natural approaches to strong stimulants or medications and overlook a crucial difference. Natural processes follow a different timeline. The human body does not adapt abruptly. Blood vessels respond slowly. The elasticity of vessel walls, the permeability of small blood vessels, and the regulation of blood flow change over longer periods of time. Anyone who uses ginger and honey and draws conclusions after only a few days or a single week is inevitably misjudging the situation. Biological adaptation requires patience and consistency. These two factors are missing in many cases. Another common mistake is viewing the approach in isolation. Ginger and honey are consumed while lack of physical activity, chronic sleep deprivation, or a strongly inflammation-promoting diet remain unchanged. In such an environment, no single measure can fully unfold its effect. Circulation is not a single switch, but the result of a complex interaction between vascular health, metabolic activity, hormonal regulation, and recovery. If only a small part of this system is addressed, the overall effect remains limited. Dosage also plays a role. Many people assume that more automatically means better. This is another misunderstanding. Excessive amounts of ginger can irritate the stomach and trigger a stress response that counteracts the desired effect. Honey, on the other hand, is often consumed in highly processed forms that contain hardly any bioactive substances. In such cases, little remains of the originally supportive effect. Quality and moderation are far more important than quantity. Another frequently overlooked aspect is timing. The body responds differently to certain stimuli depending on the time of day. Circulation follows a circadian rhythm. If the combination is used randomly or at unfavorable times, this can further weaken its effect. Many people interpret this lack of noticeable response as proof that the approach fundamentally does not work. In reality, the problem usually lies in the lack of adaptation to individual conditions. From a medical perspective, it is also important to understand that ginger and honey do not mask symptoms. They do not directly interfere with a single signal, but rather support regulatory processes. This also means that their effect can be subtle. Improved circulation does not always manifest immediately as a clearly perceptible sensation, but often appears indirectly, for example through better recovery, more stable energy levels, or an overall improvement in physical responsiveness. In my work, I repeatedly see men who have suffered from gradual circulatory problems for years without consciously realizing it. Only when symptoms become more pronounced does the search for quick solutions begin. Yet precisely at this point, patience is especially important. Natural approaches can only be effective when they are embedded in a broader concept that includes movement, sleep, stress regulation, and nutrition. Ginger and honey are not a replacement for these fundamentals. They are a supportive component. Anyone who views them as an isolated tool will be disappointed. Those who understand them as part of a long-term approach, however, can benefit from their effects. This shift in perspective is crucial. It moves the focus away from short-term expectations towards sustainable change. In the next section, I will discuss what such a long-term approach can look like in practice and the role that simple, everyday habits play in it. This is exactly where it is decided whether knowledge remains theoretical or is actually implemented in daily life. Stay with me and subscribe to this channel if you want to understand medical connections instead of merely fighting symptoms. Many men ultimately ask a decisive question. If ginger and honey are not miracle remedies and do not produce immediate effects, what truly determines long-term performance? The answer is sobering for many, yet at the same time liberating. It is not a single substance, not a single action, and not a short-term measure. Performance arises from the sum of everyday habits that exert their influence over long periods of time. The human body is designed for adaptation. However, this adaptation occurs slowly and follows clear biological rules. Blood vessels respond to recurring stimuli. Movement, regular physical load, and sufficient recovery send signals to the vascular system. When this system is challenged consistently, it adapts. Circulation does not improve abruptly, but gradually. This is precisely why many approaches that aim for immediate effects fail. They contradict the nature of the body. A central aspect is patience. In a time when quick results are expected, patience is often misunderstood as weakness. From a medical perspective, however, it is a prerequisite for sustainable change. Vascular health cannot be forced. It develops when the conditions are right. Ginger and honey can be part of these conditions, but only when they are embedded in a broader context. This context consists of several pillars. Movement is one of them. Regular physical activity improves vascular function, increases the elasticity of blood vessels, and supports microcirculation. In this process, intensity is not the decisive factor. Continuity is. Short but regular sessions of movement are more effective than rare, extreme exertion. The body responds to repetition, not to exceptions. Another pillar is sleep. During sleep, crucial regenerative processes take place. The vascular system recovers, hormonal processes are regulated, and inflammatory reactions can subside. Chronic sleep deprivation has a direct negative effect on circulation. Anyone who ignores this factor will not achieve long-term success with any measure, no matter how sensible it may appear in isolation. Stress also plays a significant role. Persistent psychological stress leads to constant activation of the nervous system. This constricts blood vessels, increases inflammatory processes, and inhibits regeneration. Many men underestimate this connection. Performance is often viewed purely in physical terms, even though mental strain has a direct influence on physiological processes. Only when stress is reduced or better regulated can other measures unfold their full effect. Nutrition forms another foundation. It does not only provide energy, but also sends signals. Diets that promote inflammation burden the vascular system in the long term. Natural, minimally processed foods, on the other hand, support vascular function. Within this context, ginger and honey can be placed appropriately. They are not a replacement for a balanced diet, but they can complement it when used consciously and in moderation. A common problem is false expectation. Many people want to feel that something is working. However, improved circulation does not always manifest immediately as a clear sensation. Often, it reveals itself indirectly. Greater stability in everyday life, improved resilience, more consistent energy levels, and faster recovery are typical signs. Those who wait only for a single symptom overlook these subtle changes. In my work, I repeatedly observe that real change occurs when people begin to understand their bodies as systems. Performance is not an isolated goal, but the result of an interaction between vascular health, metabolism, regeneration, and lifestyle. In this picture, ginger and honey are not the centerpiece, but a supportive element. The decisive step is a shift in thinking, away from the question, what works immediately, toward what supports my body in the long term. Those who make this shift in perspective make different decisions and remain more consistent. This is where the difference lies between short-term disappointment and sustainable progress. The next step is to implement this knowledge in everyday life. Small changes, applied regularly, have a greater effect than rare, radical measures. Performance does not arise through pressure, but through understanding and patience. If you want to follow this path and are looking for medical content without myths, without exaggeration, and without false promises, subscribe to this channel. Knowledge is not a substitute for action, but it is the foundation of every genuine change.